The Gospel of Matthew is the first book of the New Testament. It serves as a bridge between the Old and New Testaments. Matthew's Gospel tells the story of Jesus' life, teachings, death, and resurrection. Matthew was a tax collector before he became a disciple of Jesus. His background gave him a unique perspective on Jesus' message. He wrote his Gospel to show how Jesus fulfilled Old Testament prophecies. This was important for his primarily Jewish audience. The Gospel of Matthew is rich with themes central to Christianity. These include the kingdom of heaven, discipleship, and prophecy. Understanding these themes helps us grasp the overall message of the Gospel. Through its teachings, it invites readers to follow Jesus and live according to his teachings. This combination of story and teaching makes it a powerful and enduring text. The Gospel of Matthew was written in a time of great change. It is believed to have been written around 70 to 85 AD. This was a period when the early Christian community was growing and defining itself. The Jewish-Roman War had just ended, and Jerusalem had been destroyed. This context influenced the way Matthew wrote his Gospel. The Jewish people were looking for hope and guidance. Matthew wanted to show that Jesus was the Messiah they had been waiting for. He used familiar Jewish symbols and references to connect with his audience. Matthew's audience was primarily Jewish Christians. They were people who had accepted Jesus as the Messiah, but still valued their Jewish heritage. He had to show that following Jesus was a continuation, not a rejection, of their faith. The Roman Empire was vast and included various peoples and cultures. Matthew's Gospel reflects this complexity in its message and approach. One of the central themes in the Gospel of Matthew is the kingdom of heaven. Unlike the other Gospels, Matthew often uses this term instead of kingdom of God. It represents God's reign and rule over all creation. The kingdom of heaven is both a present reality and a future hope. Jesus teaches that it is already here in his ministry and in the hearts of his followers. At the same time, it is something that will be fully realized in the future. Jesus uses parables to explain the kingdom of heaven. For example, in the parable of the mustard seed, Jesus compares the kingdom to a small seed that grows into a large tree. The kingdom of heaven also has ethical implications. Jesus calls his followers to live in a way that reflects God's reign. This includes loving their neighbors, seeking justice, and showing mercy. The Sermon on the Mount outlines many of these teachings. The kingdom of heaven is a central concept that shapes the entire gospel. Discipleship is another important theme in the Gospel of Matthew. To be a disciple means to follow and learn from Jesus. Matthew emphasizes that discipleship is not just about belief, but also about action. Jesus calls his first disciples early in the Gospel. He invites them to leave their old lives and follow him. This call is radical and requires a total commitment. The disciples are not just students, they are followers who share in Jesus' mission. Matthew presents discipleship as a journey. It involves learning from Jesus, imitating his actions, and spreading his message. The disciples often struggle and fail, but Jesus is patient and continues to teach them. The cost of discipleship is also highlighted. Discipleship, according to Matthew, is a way of life that leads to true fulfillment. One of Matthew's key purposes is to show that Jesus fulfills Old Testament prophecies. He often quotes from the Hebrew scriptures to make this point. This was important for his Jewish audience, who valued the prophecies and promises of their tradition. Matthew begins his gospel with the genealogy of Jesus. This genealogy links Jesus to Abraham and King David. It shows that Jesus is part of the lineage that was promised to bring blessings to all nations. This establishes Jesus' credentials as the Messiah. Throughout the gospel, Matthew points out specific events that fulfill prophecies. For example, he cites the prophet Isaiah's words to describe Jesus' virgin birth. The fulfillment of prophecy serves to validate Jesus' identity and mission. For Matthew's audience, this connection to their sacred texts was a powerful affirmation of Jesus as the Messiah. Parables are an essential part of Jesus' teaching in Matthew's Gospel. These are simple stories that illustrate moral or spiritual lessons. Jesus uses parables to explain complex truths about the kingdom of heaven. One well-known parable in Matthew is the parable of the sower. In this story, a farmer sows seeds on different types of soil. The seeds that fall on good soil grow and produce a bountiful harvest. This parable teaches about the different responses people have to God's message. Another important parable is the parable of the 10 virgins. This story teaches about readiness and waiting for the kingdom of heaven. The parables of the lost sheep and the unforgiving servant also appear in Matthew. These stories highlight God's grace and the importance of forgiveness. Matthew uses these stories to convey the values of the kingdom of heaven. The Sermon on the Mount is one of the most famous sections of Matthew's Gospel. It is found in chapters 5 to 7 and contains some of Jesus' most important teachings. This sermon outlines the ethical and spiritual principles of the kingdom of heaven. The sermon begins with the Beatitudes. These are statements that describe the blessings of those who live according to God's ways. For example, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The Beatitudes turn worldly values upside down and highlight the virtues of humility, mercy, and righteousness. Jesus also teaches about the law in the Sermon on the Mount. He emphasizes that he did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. He calls his followers to a higher standard of righteousness. This includes not only external actions, but also inner attitudes. The sermon concludes with a call to action. The Sermon on the Mount is a comprehensive guide to living as a disciple of Jesus. Miracles play a significant role in the Gospel of Matthew. They serve as signs of Jesus' authority and the coming of the kingdom of heaven. These miraculous acts demonstrate Jesus' power over nature, disease, and evil. One of the first miracles in Matthew is the healing of a leper. This act shows Jesus' compassion and willingness to touch and heal those who are marginalized. Healing miracles are frequent in Matthew and include the curing of the blind, the lame, and the demon-possessed. Another notable miracle is the calming of the storm. Jesus and his disciples are in a boat when a sudden storm threatens to capsize them. Jesus rebukes the wind and waves, and the sea becomes calm. The feeding of the 5,000 is also a key miracle in Matthew. Through these miracles, Matthew illustrates Jesus' divine nature and his mission to bring healing and restoration. The Gospel of Matthew is a profound and multifaceted text. It presents Jesus as the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies, the teacher of divine wisdom, and the bringer of the kingdom of heaven. Through its rich themes of the kingdom, discipleship, and prophecy, Matthew's Gospel offers a comprehensive understanding of Jesus' mission and message. The historical and cultural context in which Matthew wrote his Gospel adds depth to its message. The kingdom of heaven, as described by Matthew, is a present reality and a future hope that calls for ethical living and spiritual readiness. Discipleship, according to Matthew, is a radical commitment to follow Jesus and live according to his teachings. The fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies in Jesus' life and ministry validates his identity as the Messiah. In conclusion, the Gospel of Matthew is a foundational text for understanding the life and teachings of Jesus. By exploring these themes, we gain a deeper appreciation of the Gospel's message and its enduring significance for believers today. Until next time, God bless and stay safe.